Wait a minute. Don't get emotional. Hey, it's Janae. Welcome back to the channel Possibilities. A few months ago, I made a video talking about consequences that I have faced and was facing because of my disobedience. And in the comment section of that particular video, a young lady left a comment that read,
"How do you know when God is telling you to do something? I only ask because I've been a Christian since birth and it was instilled in me. I even went to a Christian college. I've gotten to the point where I'm slowly losing my faith because I feel like I don't know what he's saying or if he's even talking to me."
And I had so much to say on it that I didn't know how I wanted to answer it. And so how it ended up matriculating was that I recorded a podcast episode answering the questions. I sat down, I wrote a whole 8 pages of notes, and I went for it. So if you don't know, during the time that I was away, resting, cleaning up stuff, reorganizing stuff, communing with God, getting even clearer on the things that he really wants me to do, part of that process was cleaning up my podcast. So I have dropped 8 episodes, I think now. I wasn't promoting them. I wasn't talking. I was just doing it. I was just doing it in silence, moving in silence, doing things how God wanted me to do in silence. So I encourage you that if you are a person or you know a person that is losing faith, you don't know how to hear from God, you don't know if he's talking to you, you feel like you've made so many mistakes that God doesn't love you anymore, or that he's not talking to you anymore, or that you can't hear him, or maybe you're the person who, like me, I was just trying so hard to do everything right and do everything perfect, and I was going in so hard that I was basically blocking my own self from hearing God because I was just doing the most. I encourage you to listen to that podcast episode. I will leave a link in the description box below. One of the pieces of advice that I gave in that podcast episode about, growing the faith when you feel like it's faltering is that faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing and hearing things over and over and over and over again. So you want to increase confidence. You need to say things, read things, hear things, watch things, talk about things that builds, your confidence over and over and over and over again. If you want to go about building wealth for your family in a godly way, that's something that you need to be reading and listening to over and over and over again, so it can be rooted into your spirit and your soul, and really be connected to your body. So one way that I like to do that is I like to myself listen to podcast episodes. So there's 2 podcasts in particular that I want to submit to you. One being Think and Grow Chick by Courtney Sanders. Now, I don't know when or how I got introduced to this podcast, but I am so glad I did. Now, the first episode that I can remember listening to that gave me this visceral, bodily reaction was her podcast entitled How Not to Be Broke All the Time. And I'll leave a link to that podcast in the description box. But she gives so much real information wrapped up in a godly Christian perspective. Even if she doesn't, quote line and verse and book of the Bible, it's wrapped in a Christian perspective, which I can completely get behind. I completely love that about her podcast. But I can remember listening to that podcast and being so like, I needed to hear this, that I like shared it with my mom. Now, the reason that that podcast in particular spoke to me so much was because it was connecting and aligning with the faith that I was trying to grow. Remember, I said faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing again. And the way that I'm set up, I am going to go and find a scripture in the Bible that aligns with the part of faith that I'm trying to grow. But I also want to be reading books and listening to podcasts. I want to, try to hit all the senses to get like a really full picture of what it is that I'm trying to learn, that I'm trying to get a true revelation of inside. And so with me, I was trying to shift my financial mindset. I was trying to go from a thought process of poverty and of scarcity to one of wealth and health and happiness. So after listening to that podcast and sharing that podcast, I wrote an email. I was like, look, when I tell you this podcast was so on point, and just the integrity that she has, like, she wrote me back, and she's just an amazing woman of God, and her podcast is truly amazing. So I want to submit to you that podcast. Now, the second podcast that I want to recommend is by Dr. Shante, and her podcast, it was called Branding for Believers, and then she rebranded it, and now it's called Believing Bigger. Now, same type of deal, but the thing that I like about Dr. Shantae's podcast is that she does list verse and book and scripture, so you can go back and look at it and study it yourself. Now, same thing, her podcast is and has been a great tool for me to grow my faith in different areas, right? Really the same thing with her podcast and Courtney's podcast. There have been so many of them that have caused these physical reactions inside of me. Sometimes I hear something that they say and I literally shout, or I start crying, or I get goosebumps. But 2 episodes of hers that I'm going to recommend that you listen to are in season 3, and it's called How to Get What You Really Want. How to Get What You Really Want. And it's a 2-parter. So listen to both parts of that podcast. And when I tell you some good godly counsel of how to get things in life, in God's timing, in God's process, boy, when I tell you it was so much confirmation for me that was in that podcast, so in closing, wait a minute, don't get emotional. So in closing, I want to say thank you for being a part of my tribe and watching my videos. Thank you for being along this journey with me and not going anywhere, because I know sometimes when YouTubers they go away and they disappear for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, sometimes their audience don't be feeling them no more. But I see your comments. I've received your emails. I've received your prayers, and I'm so thankful and I'm so grateful. So thank you. I really want to encourage you to listen to their podcast about losing faith and just some things that you can do to kind of gain your faith and hear from God and learn how to hear from God. And I also want to encourage you to obviously head over to my podcast, listen to my podcast, but also check out those other 2 that I recommended to help you grow and learn and build your faith and just to be a happier, healthier person. So that's all I have for now. Until next time, bye. Be blessed.